Good day, everybody. This sermon recap is for Proper 20, the year B, the year of Mark, preached at University Lutheran on September 23rd, 2012. I'm going to get this recap done today and get it up on Facebook and on the web today, as I'll be at a theological conference required for the next couple of days and maybe won't have access to online. On this 20th Sunday, we sat down on Psalm 54. It's a psalm of the day. If I want you to get anything from this sermon recap and anything from the sermon, it's from the depth of what the psalm comes from and the breadth, the width of what the psalm is asking for. So I'll say that right up front. We had a number of difficult things happen in the parish lately, some deaths, a tragedy. And so for this Sunday, for us to come together in the midst of these sadnesses, we use Psalm 54 from which to find a voice and to cry from the very center of who we are to this God who is the keeper of us. So let me get the psalm in front of us, and then we're going to back up a little bit and put this in context. Psalm 54, Save me, O God, by your name, and vindicate me by your might. Hear my prayer, O God, give ear to the words of my mouth. For the insolent have risen against me, the ruthless seek my life. They do not set God before them. But surely God is my helper, the Lord is the upholder of my life. He will repay my enemies for their evil. In your faithfulness put an end to them. With a freewill offering I will sacrifice to you. I will give thanks to your name, O Lord, for it is good. For he has delivered me from every trouble, and my eye has looked in triumph over my enemies. The heading, it's a psalm of David, as David is hiding. And it can be heard as a simple and maybe sometimes difficult thing for us to hear, kind of a psalm of revenge, saying, God, get those folks who are after me, get those folks who are my enemies. But I think it's much deeper than that, and let me tell you why. There's a couple of clues. One is this word used that we hear life, but life isn't big enough. Life isn't deep enough. The word life isn't large enough to hear what David is saying. For the insolent have risen against me, the ruthless seek my life. They do not set God before them. So there is this Hebrew word that is like the totality of who I am, my sense, the sense of me, the meanness of me. Everything I've ever been, everything I am, everything I'll ever be is somehow contained in this Hebrew word nephesh. And so David calls out that these insolent, these enemies of mine, are seeking my being. They're seeking to make me not anymore. That we typically in our Western mindset, we think kind of Greek, kind of body and soul, and if the body gets destroyed, the soul is happy and off it goes, kind of this goal of life, even though we enjoy life in our body, that the ultimate goal in life is to set the soul free. But that's not this. This is bigger than that. This is more encompassing than that, that David says that my enemies seek to undo me. They seek to undo everything I've ever been or ever will be. But listen to the next verse. But surely God is my helper. The Lord is the upholder of my life. Same word. That God is the keeper of this depth and breadth and width and height of who I am in the creation. So let's back up, because I think that's the clue. That in the beginning God's Spirit moves over the waters, and God speaks and there is light, and God speaks and there is land separated from waters, and God speaks and the waters are separated from the waters, a dome above the earth. And so God speaks creation into being, and then God speaks goodness into being. There is light, and God said and saw that the light is good. And so not only does God make, not only does God create by speaking, God sees it and speaks it good. And then God, Genesis chapter 2, the name of God is used, even though Moses doesn't get the name of God until Exodus and going in the burning bush and saying, tell me what your name is, God. So when Pharaoh asks, who says let my people go, I should be able to give Pharaoh your name. Even though Pharaoh has lots of gods and the names of gods, I need your name, God. And so we get Yahweh in Genesis or in Exodus. it gets pulled back into the creation story. Genesis chapter 2, God is named. The Lord God makes and creates and forms a human and then breathes into him life. And the person that is created becomes a nephesh, becomes living, becomes in the image of God this thing that we have trouble getting a hold of, because in our mind we think becomes body and flesh and becomes soul and body and living, but it's bigger than that. It's existence at its very core. So God breathes into Adam life. God breathes into Adam the totality of what life is. And then God says, the Lord God, Yahweh, that it's not good for this one to be alone. So it's good, it's good, it's good, it's good. Mountain and sea and star and sky and moon and sun, good, good, good. And when in fact he creates the human and breathes life into Adam, he says it's very good, but then says it's not good. It's supposed to kind of catch our ear. Good, 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 very good. It's not good that this one should be alone. I shall make for him, I shall make for the person a helper. And so then God makes for Adam Eve and presents her to him. And Adam for the first time speaks, bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh. And Adam not only realizes that she is good and that he is good and that creation is good, but that God in God's self is good. So you have all of those pieces. And so here is David now in the midst of enemies, crying out in a bigger way, "O God, come and set this right, because you are the keeper of created existence, that you are the keeper of me, small case m, but in the me that is life. That from my nephesh, there are these folks who seek to undo me, but God, you are the keeper so that I can't be undone." So here's the heart of the sermon. In the midst of all these other pieces that I might lose, folks, that this psalm is the cry of the people of faith in the history of God's people, to say, you, God, be God for us. Not so much that I am right, not so much that I've deciphered right and wrong and good and evil, and so God, get on board. Here I am, right, so come along, God. It's as if to say, God, my life is in disarray. My existence is in disarray, my world, and so your world is in disarray. So God, come. Come and make it right, and come and make me right. That's what I hear in the psalm, because of this connection to the creation story. And here again is why. That God is the keeper of existence. That God is the keeper of life, the life that we all share, in two ways. The psalm begins by saying, "Save me, O God, by your name," that David calls on the name of God. And we've already heard in the creation story that to know God's name is to know that God creates and sustains and builds and promises life. That God, in calling on God's name, is to recall every promise God has ever made to God's people. The promise of land and children and heritage, a promise of a coming king, a Messiah, the coming of grace, the coming of forgiveness, the coming of hope, the coming of resurrection. To call on God's name, David does, is to raise up God's name in defense and to speak against anything that is against God's name. We've heard it in Genesis 2, we hear it in Psalm 54. But here's the kindest thing in the midst of the tragedies, the tragedy of our day today. That you, God, are the upholder of my life. That you are the upholder of life itself, and that's big and grand and majestic. This God who breathes wind and spirit and breath into us as human beings, and then when we die. But this is how God is the keeper, is that, listen to what David says, "But surely, God, you are my helper." So this majestic name, that it's verse 1, "Save me, O God, by your name," shows up again in verse 6 with a free will offering. "I will sacrifice to you, I'll give thanks to your name." God is the keeper of life by becoming our helper. The exact same word used in Genesis 2, that we are given to one another as helpers for each other. That in the time of joy, in the time of laughter, in the time of dancing, but also in the time of tears and sadness and mourning and death, that we're given to one another to be helpers so that we should know that life is good. But David cries out, in essence, it's not good for us to be alone, O God. It's not good for us to be alone. And so God becomes, in this psalm, a helper, so that we should cry to God in a psalm of deep, deep need from the center and the bottom of who we are. Oh God, come and set the world right. The world that you have made, and these agents of chaos try to undo what you have made. God, come and set it right, and set me right, because I am yours, because God, you are the keeper of all of this. And in fact, oh God, you have become helper, so that these agents, these workers of chaos, will not have the last word. So that was our prayer today. We used it as the opening psalm, as we always do. I used it for the sermon. We also used it just as it was for the prayers. That we prayed it in all different ways in the midst of a world that seems to break and fracture and upheave at every place, with these uprisings in the Middle East and in Egypt, these lines drawn between Christians and Muslims and Jewish folks in all sorts of ways. That it's a big and wide prayer. It's a deep prayer. Oh God, there are those who rise up to undo what you have done in love. There are these enemies of mine that come and wish to undo me so that I never was. But you, God, because you are helper, because you are partner, you are the keeper of all of this. To you who are glad, grace and peace. To you who dance and sing, grace and peace. To you who mourn, grace and peace in all things. Be well.